In the busy streets of the city, we see a woman and her child picking up some food from a restaurant server. While she was distracted, a shadowy figure passed by and the child noticed. He chased after this creature thinking it was a monkey. The creature turned into an alleyway, and it waited for the child to catch up. The child caught up, and after getting a good look of the monster, he realized that it wasn't a monkey and he started crying. The monster faced the child and it started laughing. Behind the monster, pairs of yellow eyes began to glow in the darkness of the alleyway. And even further behind was the gate. The monsters proceed to kill the child. Later into the night, Seo Yuna brought Lee to the battalion armory. Lee looked around and he was amazed by all the different and high-ranking weapons in the battalion armory. Seo Yuna told Lee that the reason he was brought into the battalion armory is because Kang Seok acknowledged his accomplishments, and he wanted to give Lee a weapon as well as some days off. She also informed him that the platoon leader has yet to acknowledge his accomplishments. Lee continued to look around the armory. In his previous life, the platoon leader was stuck up as well, and he concluded that it wasn't something that came with age. He told Seo Yuna that whether the platoon leader believes in him or not doesn't matter since it's all in the past. Seo Yuna was stunned by what Lee just said. She turned around saying Lee is really smug. The sword marks on the goblins close to the gate were all the same. That means Lee stopped the first waves of goblins alone. This puzzled Seo Yuna and she asked Lee if that level of combat capability makes sense for an F rank. Lee ignored the question and he picked out a weapon. He swung the weapon up and down a few times to get a feel for it. Seo Yuna told him not to pick any random weapon just because he was backed into a corner, and she asked him to pick another weapon. However, Lee refused, saying he likes this one. Lee checked the information of the cloud blade, and he wasn't disappointed. The blade had the effect of absorbing water and releasing wet fog. To others, this blade may seem like a useless and trash item, but in the future, Sergeant Choi Yeonjun becomes known as the Sword Saint with this one blade. This blade's real name is Dark Hand of the Cloud Master. In Dangan mythology, along with Hwon, 3 weather gods descended upon Earth: the Wind Lord, Rain Master, and the Cloud Master. Among them, the god called the Cloud Master had the power to control clouds, and his pitch-black hand was called the Hand of Darkness. The Cloud Master's Hand of Darkness, upon interpretation, means blades hidden amidst the clouds. The blades hidden amidst the clouds referred to none other than the Thunder God, and upon releasing the blade's full power, the user of the blade becomes capable of using lightning strong enough to clear a mid-sized dungeon alone. Lee lifted the blade in the air and smiled. With the combination of steel and lightning, nothing would be able to beat him. He apologized to Sergeant Yeonjun, saying this time he will be the one taking the cloud blade. Seo Yuna asked Lee if he is really considering that scrappy blade a reward for his accomplishments. Lee told her that the blade is perfect for him, and said he wouldn't have enough time to pick another weapon. Suddenly, after Lee said that, a siren started going off, taking Seo Yuna by surprise. A soldier announced that a gate had opened in Itaewon. The alarm woke the other soldiers and they began to scatter around, quickly preparing themselves to respond to the gate. Back inside the armory, Lee wasn't surprised by the siren at all. Seo Yuna began to wonder why Lee wasn't surprised. She also took note of the fact that he looked calm, as if he was expecting the siren. A short while later, the soldiers arrived at the scene and they quickly set up a base of operations, and we see hunters who were wearing knightly armor marching through the streets where the soldiers had set up camp. 2 soldiers watched the hunters as they marched through. One of the soldiers was captivated, as this was his first time seeing members from the Blue Flower Guild. The other soldier told the first soldier that the Blue Flower Guild members are here because they will need backup for this gate. They continued to admire the armors the Blue Flower Guild members were wearing. All of their equipment was designer goods, and if they could just sell one of those equipment, they would have enough money to buy a building in Gangnam. The second soldier told the first soldier that once his service is over, he will get transferred to the Blue Flower Guild and live his entire life flexing. Their admiration session for the Blue Flower Guild was interrupted by Lee's voice. Lee had just arrived with his unit. The members of his unit quickly got in a straight line, and Lee, who was in front, started getting a head count of the soldiers in his unit. After the head counts were finished, Lee told the soldiers that the gate this time is a kobold gate, and although kobolds are small monsters, they are still difficult to deal with since they use poison needles and gas, and sometimes the casualties are greater than when fighting against great orcs, so there will be no rolling up of sleeves in the middle of duty. After hearing this, one of the soldiers in the front quickly lowered his sleeves. That same soldier told Lee that it's not likely the kobold will reach them, and he asked if they really need to be taking this so seriously. Lee told the soldier that this isn't a drill, and he asked if the soldier would like to have kobolds gouge his eyes out while he is still alive. The soldier lowered his head and said he wouldn't. Lee then told them to inspect their masks to make sure it will provide protection against poison gas in case of an emergency. The 2 soldiers from earlier approached Lee, saying they are surprised the trash unit also held strategy meetings. Soldier 2 laughed, saying someone could mistake the trash unit for the support squad in a raid or something. The two soldiers teasing lowered the morale of Lee's unit. Lee quickly noticed and he turned to Soldier 2, Quack Jincheol, saying many kobolds escaped the Red Ground, an area where the evacuation order is issued when gates are opened during the raid, so he shouldn't be so carefree just because they were at the back. He told him to have his gas masks ready. Jincheol placed his hands on Soldier 1's helmet, wondering why Lee was yapping so much. He smiled, and he told Lee that he could take care of himself and said he is not some lowly shit that sidekicks like Lee should be giving advice to. Lee didn't argue with him, he just reminded Jincheol to keep in mind that he was warned. Jincheol and the other soldier walked off. Jincheol teased Lee saying, "I will keep that in mind, Mr. Squad Commander of the shitty squad." The morale in Lee's squad had dropped even lower. Lee gritted his teeth and he told the soldiers to return to their senses. He says this isn't their first time hearing this, and they are in a real-life situation where death could be around the door, so they shouldn't lose their spirits. This somehow restored some of the soldiers' morale. Lee lifted a motion sensor into the air and said since kobolds have small build, they will need to attach all the motion sensors they brought with them in the sewers and narrow passageways. He gave the other soldiers 20 minutes to get the job done, and they ran to the truck and they started taking out boxes of motion sensors. Junmo was about to join the other soldiers, but Lee quickly stopped him. After some struggle, the soldiers were able to get one of the boxes down, and as they placed it down, the two discussed with each other. They were wondering why Lee seemed so serious today. Junmu questioned why Lee called him, and as Lee was about to answer, he was shot in the neck with a dart, and he fell over. Suddenly gas spewed from the sewers, and it quickly covered the entire area. Some soldiers who didn't have their masks equipped quickly died. Luckily, some were quick enough to equip their masks. However, this didn't matter much because the kobolds started attacking. Lee laid on the ground struggling to move his body because the dart had been poisoned. As he laid there struggling, what seemed like the boss monster approached. The monster took out a knife and it smiled at Lee. As it was about to stab Lee's eyes out, Junmo came out of nowhere and he trucked the monster. Junmo took out a mask and he handed it to Lee. Lee quickly told Junmo to run. Confused, Junmo asked Lee if something was wrong, and he said Lee should hurry and put on his mask. In an instant, Junmo's head was sliced off. In his previous life, this was how Junmo lost his life, and in the present, Lee looked at Junmo determined to make sure Junmo survives. Some soldiers had finished installing the sensors on their sides, and another group asked them to bring some sensors to them. Lee called Junmo's name again. Junmo answered and he said he is ready to follow any order that Lee relays to him. Lee told him that he will send a signal later, and when he sent the signal, he wanted Junmo to take the squad and leave the operation zone. Junmo was shocked, and he told Lee that if he did that it would be armed desertion. Lee told Junmo that it wasn't. Instead, it's something he likes to call war tactics. Inside the control room, the control team received a report from 3 teams. Team Delta reported that Zone 1 and 3 had no survivors. Team Epsilon reported that Zones 4, 5, and 6 also had no survivors. Team Gamma reported that there are no survivors within the first Red Ground. And at an abandoned building, Team Beta reported that they discovered a kobold's nest in Zone 2. The estimated kobold count was over 200, and they planned on entering the abandoned building using the wide-range magic formation. The captain of Squad Beta gave the signal to his squad, and they swiftly entered the building, then rushed to the center and quickly got into formation. The kobolds in the building surrounded them and quickly rushed in for an attack. The captain waited until the last second to tell the soldiers to fire. When he gave the order, the mages in his unit activated the flamethrower skill, burning the kobolds, and the nun mages opened fire. Back at the soldiers' camp, Lee's unit had finished attaching all the sensors in Zone 2 and Zone 5. As Lee was helping his team attach the sensors, Minhee approached, questioning what he was doing. Lee stood up and he saluted Minhee. He told him that he was helping his team attach the motion sensors according to the manual and marking the relevant location with aluminum tape. Minhee called Lee a piece of shit. He pointed at the Blue Flower Guild members, saying they were there to assist, so Lee should stop making a fool of himself over a kobold gate. He told Lee that the first platoon will start its operation in 20 minutes, so Lee's unit should just get the detox potions. Lee reminded Minhee that the mission to stop the escaping monsters from reaching the civilian area was relayed to them by the vice platoon commander. Because of Lee's shouting, a crowd was beginning to gather, which irritated Minhee. Minhee told Lee that he was forgetting his place just because the battalion commander took an interest in him. He tapped Lee's helmet, asking him if he had more than one real battle experience, and Lee replied no. Minhee continued on, saying how dare Lee try to teach him when he only has one real battle experience. A pink-haired girl approached them. Sergeant Choi Seonha, a C-rank mage who specializes in healing, asked Minhee if something was wrong. Lee turned and smiled. This is the reason he provoked Minhee into coming here. Seonha was his only weakness. Minhee started laughing, and he told Seonha that it seemed like the support squad was having a hard time assessing the site, so he was just explaining to them what a real battle's like. With a big smile on his face, Minhee asked Seonha why she was here, and Seonha said she was here because the battalion commander called for Lee. Surprised, Lee pointed at himself, wondering if she meant him. Minhee walked away, and on a rooftop of one of the buildings, Seo Yuna and some snipers were on standby. Seo Yuna used her binoculars to observe Lee from the rooftops, and the snipers were using their guns to spy on Lee. Seonha told Lee that he shouldn't let Minhee's saying get to him. However, Minhee wasn't important to Lee right now. He told Seonha that he still has work to do, so leaving now would be hard. Seonha told him not to worry about it. She winked at him, saying she will finish setting up the sensors, so Lee should go see the battalion commander now. Lee was reluctant to go because there wasn't much time left, and he wondered why the battalion commander was calling him all of the sudden. One of the snipers on the rooftops turned to Seo Yuna, asking if it was okay for their attack squad to be here in a kobold raid when they are under the battalion commander's direct command. Seo Yuna told them not to worry about it and said this was the battalion commander's orders. She took off her binoculars and added that soldiers are just meant to follow the orders they are given. Inside the battalion commander's temporary command post, Lee reported in. However, much to his surprise, Lieutenant Myungho was also present. This confused him, and he wondered what these two were doing together. Kang Seok spoke to Lee, saying he was going to give him a test. He asked Lee to take the place of Choi Yeonjun, who is currently on leave, and serve as the temporary squad leader of the 1st platoon for the 2nd strike mission on the gate. Lee kept his composure, but on the inside he was having a breakdown. The higher-ups had never paid attention to him in his previous life, not even once, so he was wondering why they are doing it now. He quickly realized that time was quickly running out, so he got his act together, and he told Kang Seok that he has only carried out missions with the support squad, and since this isn't a drill, he didn't understand why Kang Seok wanted to put the lives of the 1st platoon on the line during an actual battle. Kang Seok crossed his fingers, and he told Lee that this was his order. Lee angrily bit his bottom lip. It seemed like there was no way out of this. Then Delta Squad reported into Kang Seok that the boss monster left the kobold nest, and they advised that the personnel on the 2nd and 3rd red ground to stay alert. Lee turned his attention to the report. He knows that this is a sign that the kobolds will pounce on the support squad soon, and if he doesn't get there in time, the whole rear squad will be annihilated. Team Delta advised again that the 2nd and 3rd personnel on the red ground should stay alert. This made Lee grit his teeth, and decided to get out of Kang Seok's temporary command post as soon as possible, no matter the cost. He told Kang Seok that he had something to say, and Kang Seok gave him permission to say it. Sometime later, outside Kang Seok's temporary command post, Seo Yuna saw Lee running out of the temporary command post, and it seemed like he was heading back to his unit. Lee was running at full speed. He called out to his team, trying to warn them about the gas. At the sight, the sensors that Lee's unit had set up started going off. But before they could respond, gas started spewing from the sewers. When Lee arrived, the gas had completely covered the entire site. Lee was in shock because the incident was happening quicker than he remembers. He quickly covered his nose and mouth. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, then hit the like button.